Hey y'all, it's Jess from Hobby Jobby Creations, and today I am finally back at it with another tutorial. I know that for some of you who have been following me for a while, it's been quite some time since I've done a tutorial. Between life, my crafting journey, and new things I've been learning, I have honestly just been so busy and just, yeah, very busy. Anyway, so for those of y'all who follow my channel, you know that I have over the past couple years, I have I really dove into the rabbit hole of crafting. And so I started out with crochet, and I did everything from vinyl t-shirts to making cups to resin work to polymer clays. But I ultimately ended on the longest stop that I have through my crafting journey, which is where I think I'm gonna stay, and that is sewing. Oh my gosh, my world to sew. I couldn't believe how much I would enjoy this particular craft, but I absolutely love it. And it makes sense. I started out with a textile of yarn and making things that way with my hands, and then also I ended up on a textile, which is sewing. So I guess textiles is just my thing. Anyway, that being said, today's tutorial is going to be a sewing tutorial. Sewing tutorial? Well, what are we going to be sewing today, Jess? I'm glad you asked. Hypothetically, random people inside of my camera. Today, I am going to be showing you how I cotton hacked the notebook holder by Jess over at Oklaroots. The second I saw this pattern, I just thought it was so adorable, and I just had to make it. However, I live in Germany, and I have a harder time getting some of the faux leathers and things like that that I enjoy using. Not to say that I can't get those items, it's just where I live, it's a little bit more expensive and they're a little bit more hard to come by, so I have to do a lot of ordering in the mail. And then since I have to wait so long for it to come in, I'm hard pressed to actually cut into any of my materials. So materials that are easier for me to get tend to be cottons, and I tend to order more of the cottons because I can get so much at once. And so that's why I'm less likely to get vinyl, because there's only so much of it and I'm really scared to use all of it up. So I tend to go for a lot of the cottons when I do order online, and it's really easy for me to get cotton fabrics from the store a lot easier than the vinyls. I can get a lot more variety for cheaper and easier. So anyway, this is the notebook holder. As you can see, I did cotton hack the outside, and yes, I did cut into some of my back stitch fabrics for this. So that was a very, very big moment for me. Anyway, so I also cotton hacked the inside. So I put cotton Lycra as the exterior here, and this is actually cotton woven as the lining. For these flaps here, I still just used my cork fabric. This is the cork from Sweetness. I have been ordering this particular cork from them for a long time. Mostly because it's just so pretty and everybody loves it. So I did cut into some of my cork for this. However, I only used a little bit of it, and you could make these flaps with the cotton hack as well. However, it would probably add more layers, and for me, it just felt a little more complicated than it was worth, rather than just cutting two little pieces of, cork or vinyl or what have you. I also did the cotton hack this was the original one that I made before I resized it. This particular one I resized to about an inch taller so that I can fit up to a composition notebook inside of it. I just had a little more options by making it an inch taller. I didn't mess with the span of it at all, just the height. However, this was the actual original, made off the original pattern. I did put the cotton on the outside, but I did not put the cotton on the inside to this one. As you can see, all I had was a 2017 planner that fit in here, because I just don't have very many smaller notebooks. But on this one, I did the cotton on the outside, and I did all vinyl on the inside. So it's pretty versatile, the hack. You can use it where or when you kind of want to use it, or don't use it at all. Whatever your preference may be. Okay, so as for some of the things that I will not be changing at all from the pattern, like I said, I kept these vinyl or cork or whatever you want to do. These are just the little flaps for the outside that are going to hold your notebook in. And then this is the Decovil heavy piece to give it that good sturdy stabilization. And of course, my little snap tab to keep everybody together. So as for the parts that I did change, I have these pieces of, this is Decovil Lite, and I have adhered it to my exterior, and this is cotton Lycra. And the Decovil Lite is the same size as your exterior pattern piece. However, the cotton Lycra, I like to make the cotton piece at least about a 1/2 inch out. If it's not quite a 1/2 inch, you might be able to get away with it if you get your stitches close enough to the edge to just make sure that they're completely secured down. You know, you just want to make sure that your stitches are going to be able to reach it just for that extra security. And I did the same piece for the interior. The lining portion is also going to be the Decovil Lite, and I have that is the same size as your pattern piece. And then of course my 1/2 inch larger, this is actually going to be cotton woven. So I've got cotton Lycra, a 1/2 inch bigger around over the Decovil Lite, which is the same size as your pattern piece. And then I've got the cotton woven, which is a 1/2 inch bigger around kind of than the second piece of Decovil Lite, which is going to be the same as your pattern piece as well. So basically just cut out 2 pieces of Decovil Lite that are the same size as your pattern pieces for your exterior and your lining, and then cut out your exterior and lining, and then go ahead and adhere those guys as centered as you can. And besides the Decovil Lite pieces, I think the only thing that I used extra as a tool was glue. So to get your exterior and lining pieces prepped, go ahead and pop the top to your glue, whatever it may be. Maybe you're using liquid glue, maybe you're using whatever kind. I just prefer glue sticks because they work pretty quickly and easily. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to glue on the sides. Now I would start from these long straight edges because obviously the corners are going to be a little trickier. So we're just going to start from the long edges, and we're just going to press this in, and to make it adhere pretty quickly and easily, you can just add some heat to the back of it. The thing that I love about the cotton Lycra is that it's really just kind of like molds into place. So it's a little more flexy, if that's a word, but it just molds right into place. So we're just going to do all these straight edges first, and then we're going to come back and we are going to do the corners together. Okay, so now that we have all the straight edges down, the corners are going to be the harder part, so that's why, and sometimes I pull off a little bit of this just to give myself a little bit more space here in the corner. And I'm just going to obviously glue right into that space. Now the corners are a little more forgiving than you're going to think, okay? So when you're pushing these down in the corner here, the main thing is just to make sure that the edge, like right at the edge, like at least from the edge to about 1/8 of an inch in, you want that to be like as flat as you can possibly get it. So I like to push in from the edge first. A lot of times I can just kind of get away with using my nail. Some people would probably use like a stiletto or, you know, some type of tool like that. I can usually just kind of get away with using my nail. So what we're going to do is we're just going to push it, and I know you're seeing this buckling and you're probably freaking out. Don't worry. Like I said, it's a little more forgiving than you think it is. Okay, so we're going to push in, and don't worry, it's the same with the cotton woven. So I know the Lycra likes to move around and flatten itself out a little easier than the woven might, but you'd be surprised. Okay, so just try and get these little wrinkles, these little pleats down as much as you can, or separate the big ones up into smaller ones. I know that's going to sound weird. Okay, Now, I don't know if you can really see into that, but you see I do still have some pleating here, okay? But I've pretty much broken them up into smaller pleats, and I've tried to like spread them out as much as I can, okay? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to press them down, and I'm going to press them down nice and flat, okay? So we're at this point here, and then I'm just going to take, kind of pushing in from the outside again, just in case, just to make sure that that edge is as flat as I want it, because that's the part that I'm really concerned about. And then I'm just going to push this guy nice and flat. That's why I'm not so concerned about the pleats. It's not really going to make the edge super puffy like you would think it would, unless you push it backwards like I just did. But yeah, you're just going to want to kind of like push it inward to make sure it's doing that, and then just, you know, give it some pressure and let them flatten out. And as long as they flatten out real nice, you're good to go, because when you put it together, you're going to stitch around this edge, and these guys are just going to be sandwiched. So you're not even going to have to worry about it. They're going to be stitched down and sandwiched. It's not even going to be a big deal. See? And so then we end up with this pretty flat. See? They're mashed down pretty flat there. And then you end up with this nice, clean, curved edge. And we are going to do that on all 4 of these edges, and then we are going to repeat the same thing on the lining piece. Okay, so now we have our 2 pieces. We've got our exterior, which is nice and glued together, and then we also have our lining, which is nice and glued together. So cotton lycra, cotton woven, we now have an exterior and a lining. And before I continue, I just want to give credit where credit is due. I do want to say that the technique I've used for the gluing to the back of this, it's kind of a mixture between the technique I used to use for some of my Lynn's handmade projects, and it is also kind of, it's a mixture between something that I've used for Lynn's handmade projects, and it's also something that I've used for, or that I learned to do the rounded corners from Christina from Maple and Sunshine. So I just wanted to give credit where that was due. I did kind of blend those 2 techniques together to be able to do this in a way that kind of suits me a little easier. So now we officially have all of our pieces to go ahead and make our cotton hacked notebook holder. Now I will say that I had to do some of my process a little bit differently as far as what steps I took and when and where certain things went. So my process is a little bit different from Jess's. So I'm going to go through my process with you so that I'm not just sending you off with a package and saying, good luck, kid. So first things first, I really want to get this Decovil heavy bonded, and I'm going to go ahead and bond that to the back side of my lining piece. So just center it as well as you can, and we are going to, and make sure you put the shiny side, the sticky side, onto the showing the exposed side of your Decovil Lite. So let's not adhere it here so that everybody can see it, but let's put it on the Decovil Lite, and then we're going to adhere that down. Okay, so this is kind of the step where I want to mention edge coating. If you're somebody who's going to be using edge coating, if you're doing the cotton on the exterior and the interior, it's good to have already gone ahead and edge coated your raw edged vinyl pieces. If you don't want to edge coat or you don't have any, don't worry, not a big deal. I don't usually edge coat, but it's become a therapeutic process for me. So I've started to use edge coating on a lot of things. So yeah, I would already have that edge coated. Now, if you were going to make this, like the one that I showed you in the beginning, if you were going to make this interior piece be all vinyl, so if this was vinyl but your exterior was the only cotton piece that you have, I would wait to edge coat until you adhered your little flaps on there. So I would adhere the flaps first and then do your edge coating. So that's how I would do that process. And the way I make that work is that I actually add my little snap on at a different point than Jess does, only because my snaps are not long. So I just have those basic, like, short little plastic snaps that I use for this. And see how stubby this little guy is? I don't know if you can see how stubby he is. But yeah, he's a short little guy. So he's not going to reach through like all these layers put together before the flap goes on. Like, even before the flap goes on, he's not going to be able to get through all that. I tried. He doesn't work, and I'm not ordering new pieces. Like I said, I like to use what I have. So all I do is I just put my little snap on directly to my exterior piece before I put everything together, obviously. So that's how I make that work. So I just end up putting it onto this piece. Sometimes I can get away with adding, like, you know, a little extra piece of Decovil Lite here just to beef him up a little bit. So I'll probably do that. But I have done it without that as well, because the Decovil Lite's pretty sturdy. And the way I adhere these guys together, I end up putting some glue on here too, just to make sure that they try and stay together a little better. But just with the stitching and everything, I mean, they stay together pretty well, even regardless of the snap pulling on it. So it's not really an issue for me. So like I said, make sure that you go ahead and make sure you go ahead and edge coat this stuff first if you are doing the cotton exterior and interior. If you're doing a vinyl interior, wait until you put these onto the vinyl to edge coat, or else it's going to be weird and wonky. I mean, you could probably get away with it. I don't know. I just haven't done it. But it's not going to look like one piece, obviously. So I would just say wait until these guys go on to this guy before you were to edge coat. But for our purposes, this can already be edge coated. So for now, I want to set aside my interior pieces for a minute, and I want to just take a good, long, gorgeous look at my exterior. So I'm going to try and do my strap placement and also my snap placement. Okay, so I'm just using, like I said, those little plastic snaps. And for this piece, I'm going to use my pattern piece that I have cut out. And she has her original pattern piece on the fold. I'm one of those crazy people that can never get it to come out right when it's on the fold. So I always have to have this big, huge piece. I know, you know, but I reuse the thing 20,000 times, so don't worry about me wasting paper. So I just kind of line him up nice like this. And just remember which side is going to be your front and which side is going to be your back. So this is going to be my front. So obviously I want my snap tab to be adhered to my back. Okay, and this is going to be a little bit of a different process too from what Jess does, as I am not going to put the interior on I'm not going to put the lining on before I do the snap tab. I'm also just going to do the snap tab to the exterior. It works out fine for me, I promise. So it should work out fine for you. If you really want to put it to the interior, there are ways to go ahead and do that, and then you can just kind of like fold them back when you're at the sewing machine trying to adhere everything properly. But just because it's easier for me and it's worked out for me, I'm just going to go ahead and adhere the snap tab to the actual exterior piece. So we know that this is going to be our front. We know that this is where we're going to put our snap tab. I had already drew a little box here so that I could remind myself in the beginning, because I'm that person that will end up with an upside down or backwards project. So we're not talking wonky here. We're talking about every which way. Okay. So we're going to make sure that this is lined up well as we can get it. Okay. And then what I do is kind of similarly to the inside. See, I just cut out this little box here And I just cut him up the two sides, and I just push the flap back. And I just push that right up into the little box because it is perfect size for that. So that's where I know that I'm going to want him to be at. And then, if I have any glue left on this stick, what I like to do is I like to just place some glue in there first. And man, it don't seem like this glue, like this glue would hold up, you know, because I remember being in elementary school trying to use this stick glue, and it just never seemed to hold anything together. But for some reason, it is a hoss when it comes to putting sewing things together. So now I am going to take my snap tab piece, and I'm just going to put him right there up against that glue. And I'm going to give him a good press down just so he stays there. And then I'll remove my piece. Okay. And in case y'all are wondering, Slytherin is for somebody else. I am a Hufflepuff. Not that it matters. I just wanted to put that out there. But I do really think that this green is going to look excellent on here. So. Alright, we're just going to make sure he's pressed down nice. Like that. Now what you could do is go ahead and sew him down. And I'm going to show you how I do that. But also you could just try and get your snap tab placement now. And what I do is I use Jess's advice, because I tend to use these little embroidered guys all the time. And so I just line up these edges really good, and I like to put it right perfectly at the base of my embroidery design. And so I know that my snap tab is going to go right here in that W. So that's where I'm going to go put my snap tab. So I'm just going to I just kind of give him a good little push right there so that I can see a little hole indentation. So now I already know where it's at. Make sure you don't push too hard because you don't want it to go through the other layer. But I just give him like a little push so I can see an indentation, and then I'm just going to take my little tool and I'm going to push through there and apply my tab. So I actually do have a snap tab, or the Cam Snap press. However, I don't have the dies for this guy. So I just use the little kit that I got him with, which comes with this. Super cheap. And I am going to use this little piece of Decovil Lite. Just because I mentioned it, and I would like to try to give it a little more support. So where I see my little thing that I put there, I'm just going to push my tool through. Watch your fingers. We don't need any finger piercings. And I just like to put that gluey side to the back of it. Because if I want to put, I don't know, I guess just for good measure, I like to know that the heat might be there. So remember, you're going to put this flat side on the inside. And then you're going to put the other side. Hold on, he's fighting me a little bit. Bear with me while I struggle. Here, we're just going to push him through. Cool. Alrighty. And this is the male end that I'm putting on here in case you were wondering. I believe that's how Jess did it too. I put the female end onto the actual snap tab. So I have this little male end right here. Alright, so my little guy has no clearance here. So I'm just going to kind of like fold this a bit and like bunch him in there as best as I can. So just bear with me here while I try to jimmy him in there. Alright. Now I think I got him on there pretty good. Want to make sure I measure twice and do once. Alright. And then we're going to mash him down. Give him a good mash. There he is. So now we have Snappy Snap on there. Make sure he works. Oh, but don't yank your snap off, right? Bop. So he's going to look real pretty. Okay, so now that we have our snap placed on there and we have our little tab glued onto this piece right here, I am going to go ahead and take this to the sewing machine. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew a nice little box about an eighth of an inch from the edge here. And I'm going to start my box here, and I'm going to come across, and I'm going to do a box, and then I'm going to do an X across that box, just to give it some extra stability so that it sticks to the outside of this thing. I forgot to mention that when I start from an eighth of an inch in, I am also only going to be on the stitch lines. So I'm going to start on this stitch line, an eighth of an inch in from that edge, and I'm going to come across, and then I'm going to follow the stitch lines on the edges. That way we don't have crazy stitches all over the place. And I am going to do this at about 3.5 stitch length. Okay, so in case that was hard for you to see, I started right here. I came across and I went ahead and followed all the way along, and I stopped here and I came across, went back across over here, came across again, and then came all the way back over here to stop right where I started. That just kind of gives it a little bit of extra oomph right in these little spots right here. And if you also didn't notice, I did not backstitch. I did Jess's suggestion, which was to pull all the strings to the back, and then I'm going to tie them off back here so that it's a little cleaner of a finish from up here. Okay, y'all, introducing Editing Jess. So I just realized that I totally forgot to show y'all where I put my pen holder. So for my pen holder, I put it right here before I adhere the lining to the exterior. So what I do is I take a 2-inch piece of elastic, I fold it down so that it's 1 inch, and then I will place him right in here. So I'll put the folded edge of that elastic right there, and then the open end of the elastic will be to the inside so that you don't see that part. And then what I do is I just take like a piece of tape to hold that down, and then when I do place the lining together with this, this guy will be just sandwiched betwixt the two layers. And then when you come and actually sew down this edge, he'll get sewn down, and so he'll be there. And you can even like go back stitch over him right fast and keep going if you want to extra sew him down, just in that little area. But yeah, so that's what I do. I just take the 2-inch piece of elastic, fold it down in half to where it's 1 inch, and then I got the folded edge is to the outside here, about a 1/2 inch of him. So half of him is out that way, and then half of him is tucked into here. So you have a 1/2 inch on the inside, a 1/2 inch on the outside, and then just tape him down, sandwich him betwixt the lining and the exterior, and then just sew down that to make sure that he's actually held down. Sorry, I forgot that detail, y'all. Okay, so now that I have my tab stitched on and I have my snaps ready to go, I am going to take my interior piece and I'm going to place these guys wrong sides together. So you're going to put the right sides both facing outward, and you're going to put your like Decovil sides together like that, and you're going to put them together as best you can. What I like to do personally is I take my little glue stick here and I just kind of like all over this Decovil Lite. I just give it a good little bit of glue, and You ain't gotta do nothing crazy. This is just like my overbearing way of trying to keep this stuff together. So you don't have to do this. Some people would call this a waste of money, but for me it's called being as much of a perfectionist as I can. For some reason I have a problem with everything shifting all the time on my machine. So I do have just a regular domestic machine. Couldn't think of the word. So I don't have all the, I'd really love to have an industrial machine, but I do not have one, but I would love to. Anyone want to donate one and send it to Germany for free? Mm-hmm. Okay, so just make sure we've got it as lined up as we can get it. Doesn't have to be perfect. Practice makes better, but never perfect. Alright, and I just like to give it like a little good pressy press around that little snap there. And I like to look at it from the front too to make sure everything's going the way I want it to. And like I said, don't worry about these sides. Don't worry about these little corners. Like trying to look kind of poochy, because you're just going to stitch them down. So it's not even going to be that big of a deal. Alright, and I like to give a good little push on that glue right around that little piece there, the little snap. Now, after this part is when I would usually put these guys on. But before that, I don't remember if Jess does this in her tutorial or not. However, I like to, just for the sake of being decorative, I like to do a line of stitches 1/8 of an inch away from these straight edges, just to be decorative. You don't have to, but I just like to add that extra touch. So I'm going to do that right fast. So now we are going to go clippy nuts and adhere these little flaps to the rest of the body of the cover here. Or holder, I should say. And we are going to go especially clippy crazy in these curves. Not for the same reason that you typically would. Oh my god. Look at. Oh no. Oh no. R.I.P. Not for the same reason that you would a circle bag, but just purely for the fact that I do not want my pieces to shift at all. That's why I had put the glue between the exterior and the lining. And so I just want to make sure that there's not going to be any shifting, because I really, when you do the cotton, you can't really trim things down. So like I said, we are just going to go clippy crazy all over this bad boy. I am going to put some clips right here just to make sure. And remember, especially in the curves. So I'm going to do this side, and then I'm going to do this side. And then after we're all clippied, we're going to take it to the sewing machine. So I'm just going to take this and I'm going to stitch them all the way around, and we're going to see what we end up with. Okay, so now we're at the sewing machine. Like I said, we are going to take this 1/8 of an inch all the way around. I'm going to backstitch at the beginning and the end, but that's because I don't care about those ends showing right here. So I'm going to still do the backstitching. You can also do the thing where you pull the strings to the back and burn the little tips, or boop the tips, as Jess would say. So yeah, but like I said, I'm going to backstitch at the beginning, sew 1/8 of an inch all the way around, backstitch at the end, and I'm going to do it at a 3.5 stitch length. Okay, so here is what I ended up with, and as I always end up doing some way or another, I did manage to find a way to mess this up. I forgot to add my bag tag on the back, but that's okay because it still works perfectly. It looks beautiful, I think, and I am really stoked with it. I'm really happy with this. I think it looks great, but of course, we need to make sure we test them out first. Okay, so I have a composition book that I'm going to borrow from my son for his school year this year. And we are going, probably should have done this a better way, but I'm just going to bend this guy backwards, get him in there, and he fits swimmingly. And isn't that just adorable? And that's it. We are all done with the cotton hacked Oklaroots Notebook Holder. I'm so excited with how this came out. And of course, I absolutely love this print. Backstitch Fabrics is probably my favorite place to get fabrics from. I have to be completely honest because my cabinets are filled. But yeah, if you like this tutorial, please give me a like and a subscribe. Hit the bell to see when I get new content. Leave me a comment. If you'd like to see more content from me, that's the best way to get more content from me. Let me know that you actually have use for my output. But yeah, thanks again so much to Jess from Oklaroots for letting me do this. I know that she probably would have done a much better job and she would have figured it out on her own, but I appreciate her letting me do this for y'all, and I really hope that somebody got use out of this tutorial the way I got use out of it. So thank y'all so much, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.